We have broken down into 4 topics. The first is just a general topic. Bruce Godfrey's going to talk about just 30 tips in 30 minutes for using technology, especially for solo and small firm practitioners. This is co-sponsored by the Solo and Small Firm Practice Section and my department at the Maryland State Bar. If you're not currently a Solo and Small Firm Practitioner Section member, please feel free to join. Their listserv is valuable, and there's all kinds of other cool things that are going on this coming year. The second session will be on Google tips. Most people don't know what Google can do. It can do a lot of things besides just look up information. It's really quite amazing. Between the fact that Apple is now trying to demolish Google, there should be interesting things happening in the future. And then we're going to talk about social media. Laurie Wasserman is going to talk about social media and how to use it from a lawyer's perspective. 30 minutes is not enough time to learn everything you need to know about social media. I understand that. But it's a good introduction. And then the last part is just apps and online tools for lawyers. If you're not currently using an iPad, you should. It's a cute, it's a fabulous little device. On the Maryland State Bar Association website, so you know, we currently have 3 free webinars for members: iPad Basics, iPad Beyond the Basics, and iPad Apps, just specifically for lawyers. And they're all free to MSBA members. They're an hour long. You can listen to them whenever you want. And if you want to see exactly where they are, I'm happy to show you where they are. Also, if you have an iPad, you're currently here, and you want to download all the materials and take notes, there's a 13-minute video that I did on how to do that, or you can ask me and I'll show you how to download it and take notes and everything on it. So that 13-hour video took me 10 hours to do. It's not that simple. Why don't we get started? Why don't we get started? So this is Bruce Godfrey, and he's going to go through this. We're going to start and stop every one of these sessions on time because we literally have 4 people who deserve their 30 minutes in the spotlight. So Bruce, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll just be in the back.
Thank you very much, Pat, for all your support on all of this. Real quick, my name is Bruce Godfrey. I do employment law and unemployment litigation at multiple levels, from administrative hearings up through judicial review and Title VII claims, wage claims and related claims. It's not about me today, it's about the tech. All right, first tech tip, we're going to hit 30 tech tips, and we'll go pretty fast so we can comply with the 30-minute rule. The best thing that's happened to my practice since licensure has been the arrival of the Fujitsu ScanSnap S1500. If it were a religion, I would convert. It was a $400 spend, and I usually don't like to spend, that kind of money on a piece of equipment if I can avoid it. But the scanner is lightning fast. It converts documents into 12 different formats. It's reasonably compact. I won't say it's portable, but it's about the size of a loaf of bread, maybe a little smaller. And it can handle weird paper like receipts or index cards or scraps of paper that your client hands to you across the desk. I strongly recommend this device. After I bought one, my mother bought one, and she's not an attorney and doesn't need one for law practice management purposes. It automatically can scan your material into specific client-specific folders if you program it to do so. It's wonderful.
Bruce?
Yes?
Is it scan SCAP or scan snap?
Scan Snap. You caught a typo. Thank you very much. Okay. Apple computers. If this were a religion, I would not convert. Because I like Apple, but I don't love them. Apple has been good to me overall. It wasn't that good to me today because it wasn't adaptable with today's presentation equipment, for which I have my colleague Heather to thank for her generosity with her machine. But the Apple computers have done a lot for my law practice in terms of avoiding virus trouble, avoiding snags of having to convert a document the hard way into PDF to strip metadata out that's native to the Apple computer, so that you're not sending unintended information to a counterparty in the deal or opposing counsel. And all of the Microsoft Office software is fully bilingual, Mac and Windows now. For a while it was looking like they weren't going to be, but they are. I like them, I don't love them. The printer that I use in my fairly compact practice is a Brother HL2270DW. Now why this specific model? Very simple, it's fairly inexpensive, and it's wireless. So there's no wires to trip over in the office, no liability concern. Not only for somebody tripping over the wire, namely myself, but also knocking the machine off of the shelf. And it's relatively inexpensive piece of equipment, under $150. Where I bought it, you can probably get it for less. It also handles envelopes decently, which has been a big big pet peeve with me in terms of getting just an envelope to look properly coming out with an address printed in the proper alignment. I like this machine, and I'm a tough customer. Okay, Live Scribe Smart Pen. Does anyone here have a Live Scribe pen? Okay, then a few have, most have. Live Scribe pens allow you to record the audio and video of you taking notes and what's going on around you while you're taking notes. You could use it today, I suppose, as long as everyone gave their consent to be recorded, which I guess the recording equipment means we have. One downside is you probably can't take it into a courthouse and use it for audio recording because it's an audio recording device. But it might be useful for recording client conferences with client consent. Okay, smartphones. Probably everybody in the room has a smartphone if you're here on the tech sector. My bet is probably 75% do. iPhone, a Droid, a similar machine. I don't love mine, but I like mine. I've had 3 of them since 2008. A few months ago, unfortunately, I had my second one taken from me at gunpoint. But I didn't hesitate to replace it with the same model. I hated the spend just because who wants to spend money just because some robber sticks a 38 in your face. But I have no regret about the choice for me, the iPhone. I have friends who love the Droid. I don't think that it's an absolute necessity for every practitioner, but I think that the more mobile you are and the lighter your practice and the lighter your administrative infrastructure is in the back end, the more the iPhone or the Droid or similar device compensates on the front end by enabling you to get emails on the fly, get an email scan of a fax so that you don't have to go running back to the office. I think they're worth the money, even though I've heard reasonable people whom I respect question the spend. Pat mentioned the iPad a few minutes ago. I don't own an iPad. My children do, but I don't. I have kids with special needs, and they use them as assistive technology. Because that's a need for them, they got to have one. Because it's a want for me, I don't get to have one yet, but I'm going to get one soon. I've heard about, particularly folks who do trial work in front of juries. I've heard that there are ways of using the iPad to make the jury presentation devastating in terms of being able to expand a working copy of an exhibit up and down. Food for thought. You've probably heard about cloud computing. And I think the term cloud computing is about 50% hype. It might be more. We've all been doing cloud computing since we started doing email. It's basically using offline servers that are not in your own office to get things done that you want done. Whether it's processing email, processing a calendar, processing reminders, holding client information, holding documents, holding to-do lists. I think that the term cloud computing is overblown, but the idea without the hype is actually a pretty good one for a lot of practitioners. Better to take advantage of, let's say, 50,000 customers being able to fund the same security apparatus or infrastructure on someone else's server than to take your own best shot on your own $2,000 server in your own small practice. It's a good way of risk pooling, I believe. Anyone here use Evernote? Okay, I've become a big fan of Evernote. Evernote is essentially a free online hard drive plus. It allows you to throw a surprising variety of information, content, documents, web material directly from the websites, even voice memos directly into Evernote and save them online so that you can access them from any future computer. There's a substantial amount of free storage that comes with it. I've exhausted my free storage, but it took about a year, and I'm now paying, I forget what I'm paying, and I don't usually forget what I'm paying. but I don't remember which of those I have. Dropbox is similar, sort of bigger and dumber, but in a good way, bigger and less cerebral than Evernote. Dropbox is sort of a no-frills, large hard drive online that you can use for accessing a great variety of material. Whatever you would throw onto your hard drive, you can throw onto Dropbox. Obviously, you have to do your own due diligence regarding security issues, but you'd have to do that with your own computer and your own network in your own office. So it's not a new problem, but a continuation of a general security concern. Free storage for a substantial amount, 2 gig, and then $8 a month thereafter. I think it's $99 a year, thereabouts. One of the things I like about it, I use Clio, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Clio, if you sync it with Dropbox, will automatically set up a Dropbox folder for every client. And right now, that headache, getting rid of that headache alone, was worth 1 year's payment to Dropbox for the service, if not more. Does anybody here use Clio?
They're
Okay.
also a vendor downstairs, so you want to stop by and see them.
Thank you. Clio is a pretty good practice management service. I give it like an A- B+. I use it and have been using them for about 2 years. They have a server. They're based out of Vancouver, and they're based out of Vancouver in part so that they're not directly subject to the Patriot Act for their Canadian clients. We're subject to the Patriot Act. We're here, but they have a continent-wide client base of attorneys. Patriot Act in terms of data privacy for their clients. The Clio basically allows the creation of matters and storage of documents for each client, escrow management, and a good-looking billing program that makes rather good-looking invoices for shipping out either by email or by U.S. mail. I don't have a dead weight, anchor fax anymore in my office. I haven't had one for 3 years. And the reason I don't is I use myfax.com, which allows, with the backup of the scanner, to fax out anything or fax in anything by scanning and emailing and printing off of other equipment other than a fax machine. It's $10 a month. I forget how many you get free, but I've never exhausted it and I've tried. Maybe it's 100 pages in a month, 50 out or something like that. But it's wonderful. It keeps a log. You can even set a fax to go out tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock or at 4:59 on some day if you want to beat some 5 o'clock deadline, fax it something in. My Case Inc. is not something I put no warranty behind it, but it might be worth a peek, if only for comparison. Anybody here ever use Facebook? Okay. Imagine an illegitimate love child between Facebook and a practice management system. It's a law practice management system that has the feel and look of, for lack of a better term, Facebook or other social media platforms. To me, that's not attractive. But to other people, that may be appealing. To some clients, it may be appealing. To some practitioners, it may be appealing. And so I mention it simply for variety. MyCaseInc.com. Apparently, they also do billing and escrow management within there, and clients have the ability to check the status of their case by going through a portal that may be more familiar to them. It wouldn't work with my client demographic. A lot of my clients have no email addresses, let alone internet access at home. But it would work for some, I suppose. DirectLaw.com is founded by an attorney in Owings Mills, which is a secure platform for the delivery of actual client product rather than using email. And not only does it allow a customer or its attorney clients to deliver documents to clients, final work product, but actually assists in the creation of those documents through automated document assembly. I've never met Richard Grenna, but I've spoken with him once on the phone. I'm not a client of his. I have no financial stake in it. But I figure if he's local, it might be worth checking out if you have a need for an online platform by which to communicate with certain clients. If you have clients who are hearing impaired, disabled citizens, if you are a disabled citizen or mobility impaired, it may be a useful tool for you to deliver work product to a client rather than going to a physical office. Similarly, TotalAttorneys.com is the company that bought out VLO Tech from Stephanie Kimbrough, who's sort of a superstar out of North Carolina. VLO Tech, the software that TotalAttorneys.com now recently bought from her, does something similar to what Richard Granitz does. The two software packages are often compared. online secured portal for client communications, delivery of work product. And again, for your practice area, it might not be appropriate. For me, it wouldn't work as well, but for others, it may work very well. I know an attorney, I believe it's Don Bowen in Rockville, who practices family law through the Total Attorneys platform and loves it, loves it, loves it. And I might be worth taking a look at, totalattorneys.com. Google Apps. Pat mentioned something about Google being much more than just online search and email, and that's true. In my practice, brucegodfrey.com is my web domain, and I own it, or I guess I rent it for the biannual fee. But my internet service provider, which is based out of Boston, doesn't provide my back end. Google does, and for $50 a year, they will provide the administrative back end behind your front-facing website going forward. If you like Gmail, you like the attributes of Gmail, but you don't want to have a Gmail account saying, Jane or Joe Attorney at gmail.com, you'd rather have your own domain name, and for professional image purposes, you can get the advantage of Google's engine, but with your identity up front, and it's seamless. It's worked out rather well, and Google Apps also integrates with a large number of other online platforms, including Clio that I mentioned before. So if I create a client identity in Clio or on my email account, they talk to each other, and the contact lists sync, including phone numbers and email addresses, which is rather convenient. Skype is a useful backup phone. When the good citizens who stole my phone, robbed me of my phone back in January, took my phone and weren't kind enough to replace it, I used Skype until I was able to get together and replace the phone. And Skype enabled me to keep in contact with clients and also with family. Skype is internet phone. Some of you probably used it, maybe all of you have used it. It's ridiculously cheap or free, depending on which way you go. If you're cheap like I am, you'll do free. If you're less cheap, you'll do very cheap. But the phone calls are either free or about 2.5 cents a minute, which is almost too, in our line of work, is almost too small to tabulate. Forms function in Word. Have you ever seen a document that had the wrong person's name in it? Somebody used a template. Maybe you've done it. Okay, go to lawyer confessional. Bless me, Father, for I've sinned. I put Jane Jones's name in Mark Miller's old template, and it went out, and I got humiliated. The forms function in Microsoft Word can provide a complete barrier to that ever happening once. What you can do is set up a template for whatever documents you use routinely, including basing a template off of a successful form that you used for client X, but strip all the names out ahead of time, put in form fields, or even better, recreate the document from scratch based on the old one so you don't carry any of the bad metadata. Throw the fields into the document and then set it to locked form so that the only thing you can change are the things that you want to change, and you won't change anything else by accident by hitting a carriage return or a tab and throwing your formatting off, but you'll be guaranteed never to violate Rule 1.6 for confidentiality. By doing that, you won't have a metadata problem, and you won't feel the horror, the shame of having gotten one of those documents sent out. Converting to PDF. Within my Apple, it's automatic. It's essentially automatic. Anything an Apple computer can print, it can make a PDF out of. Windows is a little bit less PDF native, but there are software out there that will convert to PDF very quickly. It's better to send it by PDF in most cases, unless you're having a working draft going back and forth with a counterparty, because you don't want the metadata, the information about what you deleted, your early drafts, the hidden information that's hidden in the document. You don't want that going out to a counterparty. If you maintain a website, you might find it useful to take a look at Feed Informer. It's ridiculously cheap or free, and it allows you to put custom feeds from blogs, your own blog or any other blog, onto a website that you control. It's like an RSS feed, if you're familiar with that, only your readers can read it on your site. I use that to put my law practice blog up on my front page so that people want to see what I've had to say, if there are such people, so that my reader, whoever she or he may be, one of them, can find out the latest information. Feed.informer.com. It's free unless you use a ridiculous number of feeds. I think after 60 feeds, they start charging you $5 a month. I don't know how you do 60 feeds with solo law practice. Okay, the death rate. The death rate is one death per body. If you have a body, you will have a death. The question is when. The death rate remains the same, one per human. And one of the things that we have not examined enough as a profession, though the Baltimore County Bar Association and other bar associations are beginning to approach this, is what do we do about lawyers who die not only with active files on the desk, but active online identities, vendor relationships, data processing, online data. It's bad enough to try to figure out how to file the pleading for the recently deceased lawyer that's half written on the desk 4 days before the statute of limitation blows. But what if the data you need to make that is locked behind some 12-digit password? And you don't even know what the vendor is? Well, this is to raise an issue, not to answer the question, but Baltimore County Bar Association is starting a program for a registry of attorney information so that when attorneys die, Bar Association can voluntarily, by consent of everybody, step in, appoint a lawyer to go in and start unwinding the practice, including unwinding it electronically. I put this on wisdom because I've seen a lot of foolishness online of late, and I haven't been out there looking for it. But the tech world is not a special case for ethics. The ethics rules apply in the so-called real world and in the tech world. If you make a false advertising in a Yellow Pages ad, you make a false advertising online, it's the same thing. If you say you specialize, as it seems like 700 Maryland lawyers seem to be doing every time I open my own web browser, I specialize in this, I specialize in that, it's as much a violation on the net as it is on a Yellow Pages ad or a print ad. I've personally been surprised at how few, particularly of the newer attorneys, seem to know 7.4. I mean, it's on, I think it was on the bar exam, or at least as part of the bar program. Similarly, if you use a vendor, a legal marketing company, I'm not going to name any companies because I don't want to get sued, but if you use a legal marketing company that says they're going to put you on the first page of Google or do this, that, or the other for you, and they, on your dime, violate the ethics rules, you violated the ethics rules. They're not subject to the ethics rules. They're not lawyers. They don't matter. You know, it is not a defense to an unpleasant letter from Crownsville. You know, Feinbaum made me do it, or you know, Justia made me do it, or Lexus made me do it. I'll name all of them so nobody will sue me. You cannot. If you delegate ethics, you delegate. If you delegate marketing, you delegate ethics. As one attorney, let me pull back for a moment. Eric Turkowitz, I want to give him credit, New York attorney. Outsourcing marketing is outsourcing ethics. If you outplace your marketing and don't supervise it directly for ethical compliance, you've given over your ethical vulnerability to someone who does not have your professional training and does not care about anything other than your check clearing the bank, in some cases. Attorney Antonin Pribetic, that is, I learned how to pronounce the name correctly, of Toronto, created the term flog, which is the fake law blog. You've probably seen a few of them. It's the infomercial of the legal internet, where it pretends to give actual legal information out there, but in reality, it's sales copy, it's disguised advertising. And some of the flogging, sometimes it's from an attorney, sometimes it's from a legal marketing company doing something, or you know, for or to allegedly an attorney, to try to generate basically Google search engine optimization, what they call Google juice, Google influence. And I think the ethical and effective alternative to flogging is actually do useful things and talk about the useful things that you do, rather than just garbage ad copy. And some of the blogs that I read, the legal blogs I read, there's a lot of discussion about attorney branding and the need for social media. And about 18 months ago with Brad Shearer, I had the honor of giving a short presentation, but I gave a long one instead, on social media and so-called attorney branding. And I think 99% of it is internet hype. We're not Kansas Soup. We're not cans of Coke. Our identities are our names. We don't need a logo. We don't need a brand. I don't believe in 99% of cases. Our brand is our name spelled correctly on our own letterhead. That's how judges know us. That's how Bar Council knows us. That's how the Court of Appeals knows us when they swear us in. And that's how both our friends, enemies, allies, co-counsel, counterparty counsel recognize us. They recognize us by our name, not by some logo or brand. I've seen a lot of discussion of it online of late, so I thought I'd make it into a tip. an important thing to consider whenever you're dealing with a tech vendor, particularly a tech vendor that would arrogate onto itself the ability to control your identities. Remember that your identity and your professional independence and your ability to get things done are really the only things that you have. And while you may not be vulnerable to a vendor taking away your ability to get things done, they can, in some cases, become the rat that swallowed the cat. Accordingly, it may be worth it to consider. If you have an outward-facing phone number, make sure that you own it. Don't let the tech vendor own it. Don't let your landlord own it. You own the phone number. Forward it to whatever phone they provide you. Own your own domain name directly. If you advertise online, if you have a web presence, own your domain name. Don't rent it. Don't let anybody else control it. Don't go through a middle person. Own it and control it as directly as you can. Why? Because you, in the end, you own your reputation. Your reputation owns you. Google, in the end, rewards good content more than just flogging fluff, or they're getting better at punishing fluff and rewarding good content on a website. Plaintiff's bar goes digital. I will just reference this briefly. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, admittedly not a neutral party in the discussion on tort claims, put out a report 5 months ago about some of the scandalously deceptive practices online by some plaintiffs' firms. And I have no doubt that plaintiffs' firms aren't the only culprits in this regard. The one that struck me the worst was a fake support group, cruiserape.com, for cruise rape assault survivors. Was actually not a support group, but actually a front for a South Florida law firm with an interest in doing this. This outraged me. I mean, I wanted to raise the black flag and start cutting throats when I read that. So just consider this is 2012, and this is some of what we're seeing. Law blogs worth reading. I won't list them all. They're in the materials, but if you're going to read blogs that have to do with law tech and law office technology, I recommend the variety of the 8 that I've put there. There's a variety of perspectives. Simple Justice is run by an attorney in New York named Scott Greenfield. He's a bit of a tech skeptic and thinks it's a lot of hype and garbage. He's more conservative than I am. MyShingle.com is written by one of my heroes, Carolyn Elephant of Washington, who's an energy attorney who also writes a great deal on law practice management for solo attorneys. And the others are more specific about the technology, but they're all, I believe, a worthy read at least once a month if law and technology is interesting to you. Similarly, I've listed some Twitter feeds that I think are useful on technology issues for attorneys. Brad Shearer, the second one on there, was my presenter a year and a half ago, and he was wonderful. He knows about 100 million times more than I do about social media. And he and I gave a presentation 18 months ago on that. But I recommend those. In terms of books to read on law office technology, I included one book that may be a little bit surprising. If anyone here has read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek book, I mean, a 4-hour workweek for a lawyer is a bit of a joke. Okay, 4-hour workweek is retirement. But there are a lot of resources in that book that deal not with having a 4-hour workweek, but getting more out of the 54-hour workweek, using technology as a leveraging tool to give more freedom, more options, so that you can be more efficient when you're working and also more able to enjoy life when you're not working. Carolyn Elephant's Solo by Choice is already a classic, published, I believe, by the ABA. And Jay Foonberg's books are still the gold standard in my mind, but maybe that's because I'm a dinosaur. Okay, miscellaneous, the last tip. I put these all in because as sort of a way of saying there's no way to do it in 30 tips in 30 minutes, but that was the program, and I did it anyway. My favorite of these, of the 6, is actually the YouTube as a CLE source. Some of the best free material out there is available on YouTube in terms of getting smart in the practice area. An example of this would be in the federal court system. They train the clerks, the law clerks throughout the federal judiciary on handling discrimination claims, assisting the judge in discrimination claims. So it's an excellent primer on discrimination law, practice, procedure. It's available for free. The U.S. government paid money to give it to the law clerks but you can read it too. All you have to do is search for it in YouTube. I mean, usually we think of YouTube as for jokes and gags, but it's actually a decent CLE resource in some practice areas. There is a lot of material that's either public domain or the holders of the copyright have voluntarily put it out there to assist other attorneys and the members of the public.
And I just want to mention about YouTube, because one of the things that I use YouTube for all the time are short video clips on how to use the iPad, how to download an app. Believe me, there are people out there who are writing these little YouTube clips for how to do everything. I learned how to make a pie. Because I never made a pie before, but somebody showed me how to make a pie on YouTube. And I sat there, my little iPad. Do not, just go right to YouTube if you want to figure something out, and then they'll show you step by step by step by step. So I highly recommend YouTube. As a Maryland State Bar Association employee, we don't recommend it for free CLE, but it is, it's available. But certainly for anything technical, it really is a great resource. So I definitely highly recommend that. Does anybody have any questions? Well, go ahead.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Godfrey. It's a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you regarding your equipment. You have a printer, which you recommended, and a scanner, which you recommend. What do you do for copying? You have a separate copy machine?
For hardcore copying, there's a copy machine in my office complex which I can use at nominal cost. I don't recommend a specific copy machine because my practice areas with unemployment insurance, it's relatively paper light. I mean, everything that I send to unemployment insurance downtown can be faxed, and they prefer a fax. As a matter of fact, unemployment itself is a myfax.com customer themselves. The state government uses it. But to your question, I don't recommend a specific copier over another, but for my very light copying needs, I found the combination of the printer and the scanner to get the job done. Of course, if I were cranking out 700 pages of discovery, we'd be in a different ballpark.
How do you get the job done? I don't follow. I don't follow.
Okay.
You have to take a book, open it up, and make a copy of 2 pages, something like that. What would you do?
It's a good question. If I had to copy a book, and I find myself, it's a good question. That's not a need that I encounter, but if I did, I would use the common copier down the hall at whatever it is, 7 cents a hit. But it's a fair question.
I didn't see TurboScan. It's an app on an iPhone. It takes 3 pictures and it converts to a PDF and you email it, and you can do that for 3 pages.
I have something lighter than TurboScan on mine, but that's a great point. Could you say it again? TurboScan?
TurboScan.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take some pictures and send it.
You can take pictures of a lot of things either with your iPhone or your iPad.
But it's a document holder,
Yeah, and just forward them to yourself as well.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Laurie Wasserman. I'm with Tidings and Rosenberg, and I'm going to be speaking to you about Google tips. And I have a feeling that you guys have a lot of tips about Google too. So please feel free to share, tell me anything that you know that I haven't talked about, and hopefully you'll be able to learn something here. These are the tips we're going to talk about today. Google Images, Google Scholar, Google Analytics, Google Play, Chrome. I'm feeling lucky, which I learned was not what I thought it was. Google Alerts and Google Plus. First thing I'm going to talk to you about is Google Alerts. I actually really like this. I'm one of those people that likes to Google people when I meet them to see what I can find out. So this is kind of the way of doing it. What you can do is you can go to Google, and there's this black bar at the top here. And when you scroll down, you're going to go to Even More. In there's something that you can click on under Specialized Search, and it's Google Alerts. And it gets you email updates on the topics of your choice. You can enter in your name if you want to see if your name ever comes up. Like, for example, I may be able to get an email today saying that I spoke today at the MSBA annual meeting. You can also find out, for example, if your client is IBM. You set up a search query, IBM, result type, everything. How often you get an email? Once a day. How many? Only the best results. So if your client is IBM and you want to find out if there's anything in the news about IBM and you want to be able to email them and say congratulations on being IBM's new expert integrated system line gets Lincoln's update. So You'll get an email once a day. You can do this for your clients. You can do this for yourself. You can do it for opposing counsel. You can do it for any of your referral sources. It's a great way to just keep up on the news without having to type in somebody's name. Google Images. A lot of times you'll need to do a PowerPoint presentation, or you'll want to be able to use something in any sort of aspect, whether it's on your website. For example, I want to use the scales of justice in something that I'm doing. I go to Google, I type in, I go down, if you look on the side toolbar, there's a search and it says images, and I type in scales of justice and look at all the great examples I got. Here's a picture, courthouse. People shaking hands, great for presentations. Of course, another great guy to put in your presentation if you need him. And another one you can use for your presentations. These are all available to you on the internet. Don't use them for profit. And next is Google Analytics. Now I must admit, I learned about this one a little bit ago, but this is actually a really cool tool. If you have a website and you're looking to see how many people go to visit your website, use Google Analytics. The best way to get to this is google.com/analytics. And what this does is it monitors web traffic, and it also gives you reports at how many people visit your site, the time they spent there, and what they actually looked at. So if you're looking to see what works and what doesn't on your website, this is the best way to do it. These are the kind of reports that you'll get. You'll be able to see daily visits, the types of traffic that come to your report, where people are looking at your website. And visitors overview, you can see the times when it was up and down. You can also get stats at how long people stayed on your website. Another thing is standard reporting. You can be able to see if, for example, you have something where people are ordering off your website. How long it took. What social media people are using in connection with your website too.
Is that free?
Yes, it's a free service. What you actually do is you go to google.com. Here, let me go back for a second. You're going to go to google.com and analytics. You can sign up, and the Yes, it was me. The info on your site that you wish to monitor, you're going to go and get a tracking code. You connect that tracking code to your website. And then you're going to put some info on your website, and then you'll be able to connect your firm's website or whatever website you wish to monitor, whether it's personal or professional, and you'll be able to get that information sent to you. And all you do is go to google.com analytics, and they talk you through it step by step. And it's a free tool that you can use too. It's really neat in terms of, especially if you're trying to make the most of your advertising, and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. The next thing that I'm going to talk to you about is one of my favorite features, Google Scholar. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Google Scholar at all. It's actually a legal research tool. What you're going to do is go to the black bar on google.com, go to more, even more, and you're going to go to Specialized Search Scholar. Now it says Search Scholarly Papers, but it does much more than that. They've actually changed the way that this looks since I've done this website. So you may have to go, they have a new version and an old version. This is the older version, which goes to show how quickly things change, because I did this presentation about a month ago. You're going to click on Advanced Scholar Search Preferences. Okay? I want to find out about the rule against perpetuities, because I haven't learned about it since law school, so I figured I'd want to bring up some cases on this. I'm going to go under Google Scholar, find articles with all the words rules against perpetuities. And if you look at the bottom two, you can pick where you're going to search. There's search options down here too. You can search all legal opinions in journals, and you can also search opinions of Maryland cases. So this has got all the cases that Lexis and Westlaw have too. It's a free tool that you can use on Google. So now I typed in rule against perpetuities, and here's all the searches. You can use this for cases too. The only thing that you need to know about this in terms of cases is it doesn't say if it's good law or not. So you need to know if you're looking up a case, if you're trying to shepherdize it or site check it or whatever you're trying to do, you can't do that on here. But one of the cool things it does do is that it does allow you also to, you can either find out how the case, you can not only read the case, but you can find out who else cited the case. So while you can't check necessarily if it's still good law, you can see citing references. So this is a great place to start. If you're paying for your legal research, you can use this as a free tool. You don't have to pass the cost along to your clients, and it's also great because you can kind of access it in remote places, and you don't have to worry about keeping those passwords that you're worried about. And that's Google Scholar. The next thing is I'm feeling lucky. Okay? I'm feeling lucky is just a quick way to search. It's an even quicker way to search, I guess we could say. What you're going to do is you're going to go to google.com and type in a search query. Good old rule against perpetuities, okay? If I was going to do this, type in this tool and click I'm feeling lucky. It's a button that you have when you search. And you'll see it's at the top. I'm feeling lucky. It takes you straight to the first search query. You don't have to look at the list of things and decide what you're going to do. So for example, if the first search query, if I was going to hit search instead of I'm feeling lucky, was Wikipedia's rule against perpetuities, it'll take me straight to Wikipedia. I don't have to sit there and scroll and pick which one I'm going to do. So you do take a chance with your I'm feeling lucky. And you do kind of try and figure out if that's really what you need, but it's a quicker way to search. So if instead of waiting the whole 8 seconds, you can do it in about 2 seconds. So you save that, 6 seconds of time that you now have to read Wikipedia for the definition of the rule against perpetuities. Now, I think they're going to be phasing this button out, unfortunately. However, I think because they're bringing out the next thing that I'm going to talk to you about, which is Google Chrome. This is their new search tool, which is so new that I couldn't really get a lot of information, but it is up there. Google Chrome is a browser that's going to be on your Google toolbar, and this is even faster than I'm feeling lucky, if you can't even believe it. So we're getting real fast. It's a quick way to start it from your desktop. It loads web pages, it runs complex web applications, and it's lightning fast. When I did this program, there was a different way of getting to it. It's actually right when you go onto google.com now, you can access Google Chrome, but when I did this is the way to get to it. It was under this black toolbar, more, even more. And if you notice, I keep going to even more. So a lot of the things that I'm talking to you about today are actually kind of hidden beyond what you see at the top of this toolbar. And I'm sure it has its official name, the black toolbar, but that's what we're calling it. Yeah. So right now when I was doing this, it was under Web and Chrome. It's a browser built for speed, simplicity, and security. Download Google Chrome. It's free, installs in seconds. That brings up my next one, Google Play. This one's fun. Google Play is a way to get your favorite music, movies, apps. Lower this one. There we go. Oh. Okay, I'll just talk louder then. Google Play. You can get your music, your books, your movies, and your apps and your games in one place. You can use this with cloud, and you can also access free songs and millions more to buy on Google Play. You can also share with your friends on Google+. This is just more of a fun thing to use in terms of Google. Let me show you what you can do. Go to Google Play on the black toolbar. Top movie rentals, apps, music releases, books, games. Keep you busy in the office while you're trying to waste time. And you can use these all on your current operating systems there. Okay. Now, some of the other things I wanted to show you too that aren't on there was things that I was playing around with. Unfortunately, I cannot find my server. See if I can get it to work now. Tried to hook up here. If not, I'll just talk to you about it. Okay. It's not working. Let me explain to you some of the other things I was able to find on Google. On your preference page, if you're searching, if you want to do more than, it comes up usually in 10 as the default. If you want to change that, you're going to go to settings under Google, preference page, and you can change your default from more than 10 to 100 if you want to even look at 100. So that's kind of nice too. You can change it to 10, you can change it to 20. I like having more than 10 because I tend to go through all the pages, especially when I'm looking up, trying to find information on somebody. I like to have more choices. So that's one of the things you can do, and that's on google.com, settings, preference page, and customize default number. Some of the other things you can do when you're searching on Google is Google Commands. If you're trying to type in a search and you're trying to use the word and, like rule and perpetuities, instead of typing the word and, use a plus sign. If you're trying to exclude a term, use a minus. So it's kind of like how we search on the other web things that we use, whether it's Lexis or Westlaw. There's other ways to do things too. You can search within a designated site. If you want to search on, Westlaw.com or something, you type in the word site and a colon, and then you type in the web page. And that'll specify, you can still use Google, but you can search on a specific site. And that's, again, what you do is you type in the Google toolbar, you do the word site, S-I-T-E, colon, and your website. Other ways you can do things too is if you're trying to define a word, instead of going to dictionary.com, you can use the word define, colon, and your word. Same thing with spelling. If you're like me and you're a terrible speller and you need to use spell check for everything, you type in spell, colon, and the word. And these are just some of the Google tips that I found, and I know you guys have some too. Does anybody have any that they want to share that they use on Google? Any tips that they use as to how to use Google? Or anybody have any questions about Google? I just love Google. I think Google Scholar is also a really great thing too, and not to take away from the Westlaw and the Lexis people, but I think it's a really great tool to use, at least to get started with searching.
Google also has an app which has the applications within the app that basically is like the drop down.
Yeah, and I know Bruce talked about that too, and I
That'd
didn't
be-
want to repeat it too,
yeah.
but I know Bruce did talk about that for a little bit too. But Google app is a great thing to use too, and also you can hook it up if you end up doing what Bruce had explained with the domain name too, and you can use that all through Google app and Gmail too.
I have Google Calendar. For some reason, Google Calendar erased my whole calendar. Does anyone have that experience?
I don't know, has anybody had the experience where Google Calendar erased everything and how to get it back? No, but I will find out how to get that back for you if you want me to. I'll send
I
one.
got it back, but someone told me that with the Android, so I bought an iPhone, but I wasn't sure if anyone explained. My whole legal calendar was erased.
That's a nightmare. No, I'm interested to see if there's a way to back that up, especially if it's on your phone. I'm surprised it wasn't backed up anywhere.
They erased it all.
It wasn't connected to any sort of account, either your Gmail account or anything like that either? No?
That's not a bug, that's a feature. It's telling you you're working too hard.
Yes, it's telling you retire and you go to the 4-hour work week that Bruce talked about.
Bruce here. With Google Calendar, I found some strange things happening when I integrated, when I merged two Google accounts into one, where I had two Gmail accounts with calendars attached and merged them. I found some unusual results. Maybe that's something that you encountered, but merging Google accounts can sometimes have counterintuitive results. That may have been part of the nightmare.
Okay, well, it's good to know. Yes?
I was wondering, if you just use Google Advanced Search and you put in your advanced perpetuity, what does Google Scholar get you that's better than just doing Advanced Search?
Well, I think especially, and that was just an example of how to do it, but I think you can narrow down time frames. You can put in years. For example, if you're looking for more current articles or necessarily, I think Google doesn't limit that and give you those parameters. I really like it when I can look up state-related cases or federal-related cases. I really think that that's kind of the better way to use it. You can always Google, but I think Google Scholar also focuses the search more. You're not going to get as many Wikipedia hits or anything like that, or anybody mentioning it on their legal website. You're going to get scholarly opinions and articles.
I've often wondered whether there's any particular point to using search engines like Yahoo or Bing or something, whether it will actually appreciably be different from what you would get from Google. I don't know if people have any thoughts on that.
I don't know, actually. I don't know. I always end up using Google. Google's always been, and even though I use, sometimes even in my browser, Bing is the one that comes up, I've always found that Google's been, I've had better results from that. And I think it's also an easier way to search. I like the way that they show the results, and I found that that's better. But I don't know if other people have opinions, whether it's not about Bing or Yahoo or anything else. Does anybody have any preference or experiences with using other search engines compared to Google? Yes, Dean?
Google's been criticized for including social results in their thing, whereas Bing and Yahoo don't do that as much. Showing what your friends like, if you're linked to accounts like that. So I use Google, but they've been criticized for that.
But that's if you're going and searching through your Gmail, correct?
No, just if you're just on Google and you have a Gmail account and you're logged in, it'll show you things like on the right bar, and it'll push things up to the top that they think you want to see.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Anybody else have any other experiences using other websites? Yeah.
What the gentleman was saying, if you turn off the history tracking, actually Google won't keep track of what you've been doing, so it won't make those suggestions. So
Okay, good to know. To turn off the
forget
history.
exactly how to go about doing it, but that's what you need to do to keep that private, so they don't make us suggestions.
I don't have it with me, but it's under account settings.
Yeah, it's
I have it on my iPad. I could show you, but it's under account settings, and then you can turn off your history. What you all should do is go into those profiles and account settings, and just keep scrolling down to see what kind of information it's asking or it's automatically doing, and you can set those parameters yourself. And to the extent that you don't track your history, it won't automatically bring up certain things. Like when you pass 50, everything, all your advertisements change. That was frightening. I don't need Depends yet. Oh no. It's true. Once you pass a certain age, the ads will start to change.
It was like on your birthday, like
oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're all not there yet, but I'm going to tell you it changes.
We'll see. We'll do a comparison between what I would get and what Pat would get, and we'll see what kind of ads we're getting.
It does. And watch. Most people really don't look at the ads, and there's actually discussions about that now that they're not making money with the ads. But look at them to see what starts to come up at different times based on what you've been looking for. So if you want to really, fool it, start to look for some adventure things, running triathlons or something. Watch it change. It's interesting to watch it change, really enjoy. And that the Google Maps now is scrolling down almost to practically inside your house. Yeah, it's really. They're not coming into your house yet, but they're expanding their Google Maps, which it's a double-edged sword.
No, I was just going to say
it's a double-edged sword.
Right, it does have some advantages.
Right.
I wanted an estimate from a contractor. It says I don't have to come down. Just tell me your address and look at it outside. Look at that little crack there. I'll take your house.
And also, so that I don't know, and I apologize. I don't know if Laurie mentioned this, but people are looking for you by using Google Alerts.
I am. I'm looking for it. I'm Google Pat.
You should be looking at yourself. And another thing that you also want to do, if you have a Google account, is to, especially, there's no other Yeviks in the state of Maryland, so I don't have to worry about some other Yeviks messing up. But if you have a name where other people have a similar name, you want to make sure that you put your information about yourself online, so that when people start to Google Jane Smith, and there's a 18-year-old Jane Smith somewhere doing things that you probably would not want to be associated with, that your information is out there. That's especially true if you have a fairly common name. I would tell you to Google yourself to see whose other information is coming up. In my case, nobody. My husband has Google Alert for my name. Don't know why that is, though.
He's worried about you. Yeah.
He sent me a message. He goes, "This is interesting. Did you see this?"
Yeah.
Like, no. So be careful, because it's coming up. And the more information you put online, you write an article, you quote it in the paper, that's all coming up. So you really need to, that's coming up constantly.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that you definitely go in and create your own Google profile, simply to protect yourself from other people who have similar names. Because some of them, I was actually startled when I was Googling somebody. I thought, this can't be the right person. Can't be the right person. Somebody had a question.
I have understood that everything that is ever on the internet never actually disappears.
Never.
And it can be retrieved somehow or another.
It never. There's nobody's job to take it down.
Recently, I had the opportunity to see some examples of that, and it was pretty telling, because this particular case, the party had sought to take it off the internet, and there it was.
Oh yeah.
How does one get that stuff that is that has been taken off the currently operating.
There's a way, it's called Wayback Machines,
Yeah.
waybackmachine.com. And if you go to waybackmachine.com and type in the name of the website that you're, for instance, if you go to wayback.com and go to MSBA.org, it will show you every MSBA website and every time it was changed since we started it. And it's there forever. So if you have, if you're involved in some sort of litigation and somebody said they took it down, it's still there. It's just a question.
You can't remove it, but at least you can see where
you can see it, right. So be careful also what you put up there, because it's there forever.
Technically, it's not that it's there, it's been archived.
It's been archived.
In locations
Right.
that can be retrieved,
Right.
searched and retrieved.
Yeah, so who knows what's floating out there. Any other questions? What we're going to do is we're going to take another 2-minute break.
So obviously social media is a huge issue right now. If you were expecting me to talk about how to use your iPad, based on the description I think is in the materials, I apologize. I won't be talking about iPads today. I will just be talking about social media, just a basic overview of what is included in social media. It's a lot broader than a lot of people realize. How to use it, the different ways to use it on a very, very general level, and how to, some tips as lawyers on how to stay out of trouble when using social media. If, of course, you do really want to hear about how to use your iPad, feel free to stop me later. All right, social media is really today's hot topic, if you will. It is in the news, it is on the radar of all of the different agencies. You'll see the NLRB, the FTC, are all very interested in social media, people's use. Legislatures across the country, including Maryland as the first state, are looking at laws to prohibit shoulder surfing, prohibit employers from looking over employees' shoulders as they use social media. Courts are recognizing that social media is useful as evidence, and that it's useful in a business context as well, and it may in fact be protectable business interest in some cases. So this is on everybody's radar right now, and unfortunately it's new to us. It's very new, and a lot of people don't understand how to use it effectively. But we're not going to talk about all of the legal developments, interesting though they may be. Certainly can't fit that into half an hour on top of all the other things I'd like to talk about. So, what is social media? First of all, how many of you use social media? Just show of hands. So a lot of people use it, some of you don't. Now, I'm going to broadly define social media as any interactive, user-generated electronic media. Anything that is published online by a user, so any of you who use social media, you generate the content yourself. And then it's generated for the purpose of interacting with other users, interacting with other content. So that is the very, very broad description of what social media is. That includes this long list of things. We've got Facebook and MySpace, which are fairly similar. I think everyone has heard of them, at least if not used them. LinkedIn, which is very popular in the professional fields. Great way to sort of link to other social media sites, other online content, and for showing your professional bio, if you will. Twitter is less commonly used in the legal profession, but for example, someone just tweeted that I am going to start speaking now on social media. I tweeted earlier about my fellow speakers here today. So Twitter can be a very useful tool. It is sometimes overlooked as a useful tool, but it's a very good sort of follower generator and tool for distributing material that you put elsewhere. YouTube, which was already mentioned. I was very pleased to hear it mentioned a couple of times already as a useful legal tool. A lot of people, again, do overlook this as something that you can use in the legal profession. Pinterest and Tumblr, really aggregators of information that's already out there. They're used to compile information from the internet, sort of show people what I've been looking at as I browsed, as I collected things. Blogging, I think we've all heard of. Probably one of the more time-consuming methods of social media because it involves heavy user-generated information, but it can be used very effectively in conjunction with some of these other social medias, and we'll talk about that in brief later. Wikipedia, we all know about. It is user-generated, which is part of the pro and part of the con. On the one hand, you don't really know what you're getting for sure, unless someone has taken the time to say, I am writing this Wikipedia article, here are my qualifications. You don't always see that. But it's a great way to figure out what the common view on a subject is. JD Supra, fabulous tool for, again, reusing things you've published elsewhere, publishing new content, publishing old content that you distributed in paper, an article that you wrote for a bar journal. And we'll talk a little bit about how JD Supra works in terms of how it is used in web searches. Google looks at JD Supra content, as well as blogs, as well as the other social medias, and it ranks things based on how reliable, how useful it thinks the content will be. JD Supra, because it is legal specific, and the people who post things in JD Supra tend to have some level of professional interest in putting that content there, it tends to be ranked pretty high by Google. A lot of people don't realize that the comments section on articles, the Daily Record's website posts articles, people post comments. That is also social media. That can be tracked back to you. Whatever your profile is, it can be linked to you. You can also affirmatively link your content or your comments on those articles to other social media. And those are just a few of the options that are out there, which is why we are certainly not going to go through everything in great detail. So my goal here is to go through really what of these social medias should we be using. There are, like I said, a lot of options. And it can be hard for lawyers who are already very busy to figure out what should I use, where do I get the best bang for my buck, and what puts forth the right persona online for me. So really, at the end of the day, I've gone to a lot of conferences, done a lot of research, tried a lot of things, talked to a lot of people who have tried a lot of things, and it all depends on you. That's the conclusion that I've come to. There are so many different options of ways to go about creating an online persona that, it depends on your practice, your goals, and how much time you have to devote to this. And as it can be a very time-consuming process. In my materials, I provided links to a couple of people who do the whole 9 yards in terms of social media. They utilize it incredibly. They cross-link to a lot of different content posted in different places. That would be the Cadillac of attorney use of social media. But that isn't appropriate for everyone. So every different practice has different considerations. You might have clients who are very social media savvy. If you represent a company that develops apps, they're probably going to want an attorney who has an online presence. They're probably also not going to want to see you talk about your work on their case. And they will see it if you post anything about it. Your goals. What is your goal with creating a social media persona? Are you trying to expand your reputation? Are you trying to develop a network? Are you trying to affirmatively get more clients? What is your goal? And then your time. How much time are you willing to devote to this? Participating in social media, using social media effectively is not a sprint. It's not a one-time thing that you can set up and forget about. It's something that you have to use effectively, devote consistent time to. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to balance the content that you post, how much time you devote to it, and what you want to get back on that. So, social media is a very powerful tool. It can showcase your professional experience. LinkedIn is a great example of that. LinkedIn will let you post your bio. It'll let you link to all of your articles that you've written. It will let you link to other people. It will give you your entire professional experience in a nutshell. Social media, as some of the speakers earlier this morning discussed, it helps you control your intake of news. Google Alerts let you, as Laurie was saying, it lets you select people who you want to get information about. RSS feeds let you control which publications you automatically see news from, which topics, which communities. Social media helps you stay connected. I think we all understand that. Facebook was obviously started based on the premise that we want to connect with our friends. But it can also be used to connect with clients, to keep aware of how clients are, what clients are doing, what their new interests are, in a very professional way. Now there are ways that you can get connected that are not appropriate, which involves the mix of too much personal information into your professional online persona, and we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. But by setting up an alert on a client, you can stay connected to what they're doing, what they're ending up in the news for. By linking with them on LinkedIn, you can see if they've joined a new company. And there are many, many different options like that. You can also expand your professional reputation. I'm active here in the MSBA as well as in the ABA. So social media has allowed me personally to connect with members of the MSBA who I wouldn't have normally connected with. And the same with the ABA. So when I attend a conference, I try to tweet from the conference using the hashtag that's set up. For those of you who aren't familiar with Twitter, when you have a hashtag, everyone at the conference who is tweeting understands that anything that I say about the conference, I'm going to include a hashtag that says, this is from the conference, essentially. And then people can set up a search for that hashtag. People then see who is tweeting from the conference. People then follow me. Then I have them as a follower for the next entire year. They're now in my network. I have now connected with them and expanded my professional network. I have actually been asked to speak based on those connections. So it can be a very useful thing if used correctly. And as Laurie was also pointing out, and Pat, I think, it can help you protect your personal reputation as well. The more social media content you generate, because it is included in Google searches, if you Google your name, you will see a lot of your social media content if you have social media content. You will also see articles that you posted electronically through JD Supra on different websites. Blogs are very, very useful in terms of protecting your personal reputation because they're ranked higher than the typical social media content. Things like JD Supra, things that are profession specific, will be ranked higher than just the run-of-the-mill social media content, which is usually what you would be concerned about if you have someone else out there with a similar name. So, anyone can set up a social media profile, but not everyone remembers to interact. So if you recall, social media is an interactive process. Social media exists because users generate content and then people interact with that content. Without the interaction, you really don't have social media. So how can I make social media work for me? So first, you have to set up a good profile. That should not be ignored by any means. You want to describe clearly what you offer to clients, to your network, whatever purpose you have in setting up your social media profile. You want that to be clear from your profile page from the very beginning. You should use your own voice. If your profile sounds like just boilerplate, if it sounds very generic, no one will have a reason to click on your profile as opposed to someone else's who sounds very similar. Your goal is to encourage people to want to interact with you. Use keywords that are relevant to what you do and relevant to what you want people to find you for. Those keywords are what you will come up under if people search for those terms. You want to, after you have that profile set up, you have to continue to use your account. And that, I think, is one of the things that people often forget. They say, well, I set up my LinkedIn profile. People will find me if they want to find me. And that's good enough. But it doesn't work that way. For you to be found on LinkedIn, sure, someone might friend you or might connect with you. But to make it a useful tool for you, you have to affirmatively reach out as well. So in figuring out how to use social media effectively, you have to balance the quality and thoughtfulness that you put into what you're posting with the quantity and timeliness. So for bloggers, for instance, if you post very long, detailed blog posts on a monthly basis, that's great. People will want to see what you're posting. People will come to your blog and say, okay, I know that this blogger has great insight on these topics. I'll come to that blog when I need to know something about X, whatever it is your topic is. But that takes a lot of time and you can't do it very frequently. If you would rather have a blog that will be added to people's RSS feeds that people will automatically come to on a regular basis, you have to have more frequency than that. So then the length of your posts might have to decrease. Another way you can drive people to your blog is by saying, okay, well, I know that this person is going to have the most timely comments on this particular area of law or this particular, whatever your topic may be. But given that we have a limited amount of time to do this, you can make a career out of just managing your social media profile. But in the interest of not doing that, you want to find a balance that works for you between updating frequently and providing quality, timely commentary on recent developments. Something to be careful with in terms of your social media use is, a lot of the time you want to cross the line between reporting, here's what's happening, into, well, here's how it affects you. That can very easily cross the line into legal advice. And again, at the end of the presentation, we'll talk about why you have to be very careful about that. Obviously, giving legal advice online to a completely undefined audience can be a problem. Third, you have to remember to engage with other people. Other people are posting information too. Social media is very much a 2, 3, 4, 5-way street. So you post information, you see someone else posts similar information. Link to their post. They might link back to yours. You've just doubled your following. Whoever is reading their blog, if they link to yours, they'll come back to your blog or your Twitter feed or your whatever content it is that you're posting. And then they will become more engaged with you and you'll develop a relationship that way. Recycle. Social media is a wonderful recycling tool. You can reuse articles and announcements. I'm speaking at the MSBA conference. I can tweet that. I can put it on my Facebook profile. I can put it on LinkedIn. I can put it on my bio on my firm's website. I can blog about what I'm going to talk about. And then afterwards, I can blog about how it was received, what the other panelists talked about, and how that dynamic worked. And by doing that, I've created not just, I've reused that information. The fact that I'm speaking here today, I can reuse my materials in future posts. And then other people who see the materials here will say, oh, she tweets. Her Twitter handle is on there. So let me go see if she's posted anything else that's useful. And this is just all going towards making social media more social in a professional way. And last but not least, use and understand all of the popular tools. Laurie talked a lot about Google, which is a fabulous tool, very useful, and very important to understand. That is one of the tools that will help you better understand how your other social media use is working. Am I using search terms correctly? You can go to Google. You can Google some of those key terms that you think are key for you. See if you come up. You can Google your name. Where do you fall on the list? How many pages of content that actually pertain to you come up? These are all great indicators that Google provides on how well you're doing using social media. The Google Analytics can tell you how many people came to my blog, which of my blog posts was most useful, which one was most frequently visited, which one was actually shared. And then in terms of just the vast number of social media platforms available, you probably aren't going to want to establish profiles in all of them, unless, again, you want to make this your full-time career. But what you can do is, or what I would recommend doing, is prioritize them in the order of, one, what kind of people are on that platform, and two, how many people are on that platform. So if you're trying to decide between setting up a Facebook page or a MySpace page, Facebook has a lot more users right now, so go with Facebook. If you're trying to decide between setting up a Facebook page and a LinkedIn page, what's your goal? Is your goal to establish a reputation of, more of a scholarly reputation, a reputation saying, here are all of my qualifications, I am an not expert, on this topic. I know a lot about this topic. I do a lot of work in this area. Or do you want to really try to connect with your clients or your contacts or your professional referral network on a more personal basis? In which case, LinkedIn might not be as good as Facebook would be. So there are a lot of considerations to look at in deciding what platform makes the most sense for you. If any of you are interested in blogging, one thing to think about is what platform you're using for blogging. You can set up a blog on your own personal website, which is great. I absolutely agree with Bruce's comment that you want to have your own domain name. You want people to be able to find you. You want them to be able to associate your content with you, not with some generic web address. But be aware that a lot of the blogging platforms, such as WordPress, include a lot of valuable tools that you won't get if you just post your comments, post your blog on your own website. WordPress includes a lot of tagging features, if you will. You can highlight words, essentially, for Google to pick up. You say, okay, here's my article. All of these will be, all the words in my blog post will be seen by Google, but you can also call out additional words that will be utilized more heavily by Google to push you up the list when someone searches for one of those terms. So, this is a lot of information, and there's more coming. If you have any questions, if you want me to stop, if you want to talk about any of these points in more detail, feel free to stop me. My goal is to help you get the answers you want. And there is no way to cover social media comprehensively in half an hour. I think I am ahead of myself. All right, let's get this squared away. Any questions while I am getting this set back up? All right. Yes,
Can I
go ahead.
just pick one specific target? Let's say Facebook. I find it's designed to get in touch with old college and high school friends, but, you know, and put your stuff out socially about yourself, and family use it, but how do you target something like specific like Facebook towards lawyer to lawyer or lawyer to clients that isn't a social media and a friendship kind of area?
Right, that can really be a challenge, and it's one that thankfully Facebook has addressed recently. So taking Facebook specifically, they now have pages that you can set up, and your page is separate and apart from your personal profile. Your page is something that people like, so they like your page instead of friending you. It provides and those names that I provided in the materials, that'll show you a great example of when that has been done, how that has been done. So the way those guys have utilized pages is they set up a page for their company or for their professional persona, and then they only use that for professional purposes. Sure, here and then they may have a comment saying, oh, I'm at this conference, where's the best coffee shop, something like that. It may come up, but it's all in a professional context. So Pages helps a lot. You can set up something that's completely separate but still related. You can put in only your business information. You can, of course, include all of the necessary disclaimers saying, just by posting a question here, you are not establishing in any way an attorney-client relationship with me. I am not giving you legal advice. That's always recommended for any sort of social media where you're posting information affirmatively. But yeah, Pages has resolved a lot of those issues. Until Pages came up, a lot of people who did use Facebook for professional purposes found themselves in a bit of a quandary because their mom wanted to Facebook friend them, but then so did their client. And how do you reconcile that? Unless you want your client to be friends with your mom, which sometimes could work, but it can also get very awkward, and you can cross professional lines that way. Does that help? Sure.
Can you explain in more detail what Pinterest is?
Pinterest, absolutely. It's essentially a, if you will, bulletin board. It's an online bulletin board where you surf the internet, you find pictures you like, you pin them onto your bulletin board, and then other people can look at it. That's the simplest definition of it. So a lot of graphic designers will use it. A lot of people in the art space will use it, and a lot of people will, I have a friend who is planning her wedding, so she goes and she is looking online for different venues, for different, wedding dresses. She pins the interesting things that she sees as she browses onto her Pinterest site, and then her friends go and comment on what she's posted. They weigh in.
The person that pins the thing on Pinterest, is the reason why they would do it is, let's say they're graphic designers, to get more clients, because prospective customers look on Pinterest to buy goods and services?
They could. Pinterest is...
Generally, I don't think you'd go onto Facebook to buy goods or services. I don't think so, generally.
That's generally true. I think Facebook is trying to change that, but
You go
yeah.
on Pinterest to buy stuff, to buy goods and services? I don't know.
Not usually. Usually it's more of just the pure social networking concept. We're just chatting about things that we like. I think that's the general feel of Pinterest. It's a fairly new social media. So it could well develop into something saying, well, I aggregated these things together. If you like the way I aggregated these things together, maybe you would like my interior design. Maybe we have similar aesthetics. So it could be a sort of a PR tool for people in more creative industries. I'm not sure how it would be useful to a legal professional.
That's what I was wondering.
But right. It's one of the social medias that are out there. You have to be careful if you're commenting on, say, a client's Pinterest page. If they posted a lot of, cool places I went in 2010, when in 2010 they're claiming they were in a terrible car accident and couldn't go anywhere, you could have a problem there. So you have to be aware of them. You have to be aware of what's out there, what people may be using things for. But I don't see it as something that legal professionals would use as a marketing tool.
Well, can an attorney, law office of John Doe, put up Pinterest, that he knows the gloves and John Doe is a great place to go if you need to work this stuff. Like,
You certainly could, but again, it's more of a graphic thing. So if you, I suppose you could. I suppose you could take pictures of the attorneys in the firm, take pictures of, you know, the courts that your firm has litigated in, put all of that up, put that together. There are a lot of creative ways to use this media. Okay? So in the interest of time, I think I have 5 minutes left. We will just look at, you know, staying out of trouble. There are, and I am frozen. Oh, we're having technical difficulties. All right, here we go. Okay. We've already touched on the mix of personal and professional content. It's a challenge. It's a challenge, and especially for legal professionals where we're bound by ethical rules, we have to be careful what we say anywhere in writing. If you, in your profile, identify yourself as a legal professional, that can be held against you as a legal professional too. So if you say, I'm a lawyer in your bio page, then when you comment, oh, I'm establishing an expertise in this area, you can get in trouble for that. You might not think about it in that way. It's a very informal conversation. I'm not trying to represent myself as an expert in a field, but it can be held against you. So you have to be very careful when using social media. A lot of the time people will say, well, I'll have my Facebook page where I won't even say that I'm a lawyer. That gets you around that problem. Because anyone who looks at just your Facebook page and says, oh, and sees you commenting about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, I'm going to this great training, I feel like I'm becoming an expert, it won't be associated with you as a professional as closely. You still have to be very careful putting any of that kind of stuff in writing as an attorney. Recall that all ethical rules still apply online. I think Bruce mentioned that as well. Very, very important to be aware of. I mean, you can go through the ethical rules and you can identify a relevance of just about every single one to social media. It's a little frightening. One thing to think about that you may not consider is, you know, the duty of competency. So social media is a big issue. It is a huge hot topic right now. And you actually have a duty to your client to be competent in terms of social media. You know, just basics. How does it work? What happens when I delete a post? Is that spoliation? What are all of the ramifications involved in that? Using social media for conversations, you need to know when social media is and is not an appropriate medium for conversation. If you are active in social media, a lot of the time you'll get comments from people saying, I see that you know a lot about this area of law. What about my hypothetical question? Just be very aware that anything that you're posting is public. If it doesn't appear to be, it could become public in the future. Facebook, for instance, changes its privacy policies constantly. So you have to be very, very careful about that. Am I being cut off?
No.
Okay. All right. Obviously, be very careful about posting any client or work-related information, not only because of confidentiality and privilege concerns, but also in terms of who might see your comments. Your client might see something that you posted. And even if it doesn't directly concern that client or a case or anything of that nature, if you make a statement generally saying, for example, I think restrictive covenants are terrible and they should never be enforced. A client who is considering retaining you to enforce a restrictive covenant might raise an eyebrow. So just think very carefully when you're posting things online. You know, not trying to scare you away from social media completely, but there are a lot of things to be aware of. Remember that you're never completely anonymous online. You may want to do your due diligence on someone. you get a new case, you have somebody on the other side, you want to Google them and see what's out there about this person. You want to go on Facebook and look them up. What is available publicly on these people? Even that is not necessarily anonymous. If you go on Facebook, if you log into Facebook, you're logged in. They may be able to track back who did the search for their name. Whether that retracing of your steps is completely reliable, that's a little up in the air. There are apps that say that they can do it with 100% accuracy. That's a little questionable. But just make sure that any searches that you do are in full compliance with the ethical rules. Don't contact someone through Facebook, even if you're trying to do it anonymously, when they're represented. Don't be deceptive. Don't try to set up a dummy account and friend someone to see what their posts were. Don't check up on people you're not allowed to check up on. So just take social media with a grain of salt and make sure that you're following the rules of ethics. And last but not least, the spoliation concerns are a big issue, especially when you're representing clients and they have individual clients who have social media accounts themselves. A lot of the time, clients won't realize that you know about their social media accounts. People on the other side may not realize that you know about their client's social media account because their client hasn't told them that they have one. But just as a due diligence matter, check with your client. Say, I know you haven't told me you have a social media account, but here are all the different things that could be included in a social media account. These are all things that could be discoverable. These are all things that you're not allowed to delete. And these are things that you have to disclose. So in terms of representing clients, it's very important to be aware of what is out there, of what the concerns are, and make sure your client is aware of that as well. So, and yes, I don't want to forget to mention, this can be a very, very big problem if you don't advise a client properly. Not that long ago, an attorney was personally sanctioned for $700,000 for working with his client and allowing her to delete her Facebook page in the course of litigation. So just be aware, it is a big issue. All of the agencies, all of the courts are very much on the lookout for it right now. So, yes?
So your client puts a picture up, you can't say that's inappropriate, take it off?
If you're in the course of litigation, no. If no litigation is anticipated, sure, you can tell them to take it down. You can tell them this content is inappropriate, but it falls into the spoliation category. If there's information posted online, I know your first instinct would be to say, we're in litigation, you can't say that. But you can't. Yes?
You have an obligation to your client to say, I just saw this on your website, this is dangerous.
Right, you do. You absolutely do.
You can't take it down. Don't take it off. Because, rules of evidence say they're allowed to find this and hammer you for it.
Exactly. So that goes back to my comment. You have to be competent. You have to make sure that your client is aware at the very beginning. Don't post anything. Just don't. Stay off social media. Yes?
I'm assuming there must be some nexus between what is being posted on Facebook and the subject of the litigation.
Yes.
I mean, you don't have to generally advise your clients, don't touch anything on Facebook.
You don't have to. You can certainly say, here is a list of the things that you should not be posting about right now. Pros and cons to that approach. Something that is relevant may not be something a client thinks is relevant. So what is relevant may be a larger category than what your client thinks is relevant. And the other concern is if it's something concerning that the client is posting, even if it isn't relevant to the litigation, there are certainly courts that have required plaintiffs in personal injury cases to turn over their entire account, not just the relevant content.
So you are saying basically for any client, for any purpose, they should freeze their social media accounts.
Unless they have a really good reason not to. If they have a really good reason to continue to use the account, if the account is tied to their profession, then you would probably need to recommend to the client, don't use it for anything. Be very careful about what you post. But if the client is using it for personal reasons only, I generally tell them just don't use it. Just for the course of the litigation, from now till it's over, just don't use it. So I just saw a couple of hands. Go ahead.
I'd like to know if before the client signs the retainer, when they're in a consult with you, a potential client, prospective client, can you tell them at some point, maybe even before they tell you what the issue is, can you say to them, in a lot of cases, if you have something bad on Facebook or any social media, it could affect your litigation, so before we go any further, I want to tell you now to take it down. Can you do that?
Well, you're still recommending that they delete information that could be relevant to the case.
Okay, let's say you don't recommend it, but you say to them, I want you to know, it could be, it could adversely affect your case.
Anything you post online could adversely affect the case. Well,
no, anything that you've already posted.
Right. So you might personally not be on the hook, but your client will be. So if you're trying to protect your client's interests, I would recommend against saying something like that. Yes.
Is there a way to copy what's on your client's Facebook page so that when it's removed, it can be destroyed and therefore?
Absolutely. You can easily download the entire Facebook profile.
Then what would prevent you from having your client take it down at that point?
I think that would probably be an acceptable sort of compromise. You're preserving the evidence. You preserve it by downloading the entire profile. Anything that could possibly be requested has now been preserved. If a request comes across for it, then you have that content. That would be actually a very good compromise.
Can you tell us how to actually download it? Physical and what you do?
They change it every other week. If you go into the Facebook help section, there's a button in there that says download my entire profile. I think I included it in the written materials. I may not have. If I didn't, then I have cards. I can email that to you.
Don't hesitate to always to use the help information on all of these, like social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook. There's a lot of information. You have to scroll through a lot of it. It's not easy. It's not designed to be easy. It's designed to be complicated.
I suspect that you could, or maybe even should, tell the client, or even the potential client, that from now on, don't put anything that on Facebook.
Right.
2 minutes. Absolutely. We're gonna. I hate to do this. Heather will stay around for a couple minutes. We're going to. I apologize.
No problem.
One of the things I always say about social media is, even if you're not using it personally and you don't get the whole marketing thingy, you need to understand it from a legal perspective, as practicing lawyers, what the legal ramifications are of this social media. Things are happening all the time, and that's where you have an obligation to have a real understanding of social media. I don't personally use a lot of it, but I'm on there just so I know what other people are doing, because you have an obligation to do that. It's just like years ago, we had an obligation to have computers in our offices. That's how long some of us have been around.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Hughie, as I've been introduced. I've been practicing here for about 10 years, and in the last 10 years, everything has changed. I don't know who's in a small firm. I assume everybody's in a small firm or a smaller firm setting here. I remember my first meeting, we started out with time slips. I won time slips at the, I got the little dots and I got time slips. It seems like such an ancient thing now, and some of you are probably still using it. So today, there's so many things out in the field. This presentation is going to be about 4 or 5 of the things I use every day and how I think it can help you make more money, spend less time in the office, and work really anywhere you want to work. So I wanted to be interactive. I'm going to share some of the stories I've had, and actually this summer I'm going to be working in Panama, and I've already got it linked up where my office and I will be in contact every day. So I'll be there for about 45 days, but I'll still be working. And at the end of this presentation, I want to show you how you can do it too. And maybe not Panama, maybe it'll be Ocean City, but you don't have to be, you can be anywhere you want to be today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is phone systems. You know, when I started out, you know, Verizon was kind of it. And then, you know, they had the other, I think Cavalier came on the market. And you remember that?
They filed Chapter 11.
Right, they filed Chapter 11. It was kind of, you had all these other weird things. But now you have this kind of internet phenomenon where you can have a phone, you got all these lines, and it's cheap. It's very inexpensive. Now, out of these 4 things that appear before you, I actually use Ring Central. And I actually have an app. They have an app. So you can literally call from your phone through the app, and it's like you're calling from your business line for people who don't want to give their clients their cell phone number. You can check faxes. You can send faxes. It's really, I think, a great option. I will say, you know, on the negative side, there have been some connectivity problems, so it's not a perfect thing, but as the years go on, it gets a lot better. Does anyone use Ring Central here? Anyone? No one? Am I the only one? Wow. So you should really look into it. I think for the same services, it was about 50% less than what we pay with Verizon. And we got a dedicated fax line and some extra lines. And with this system, I can actually, as long as I have a wireless connection, I can plug it in anywhere and the phone will ring to that number. So when I go to Panama, I can take this phone with me, plug it into Panama, and if you wanted to call me on my number, it would ring wherever I'm at in the world. So I think just by that, I mean, it's something to really consider. So no one uses.
I just have a question. I'm sorry. Excuse my ignorance. Is this instead of your regular phone carrier or in addition?
This is instead. Okay. They carry this is your phone carrier. Although, you know, I believe the way it works, Verizon still has some play in it, but they are your official phone carrier. So that was you. But
faxing or scanning it, or are you faxing on a fax machine?
You can do both. I mean, you have a dedicated fax line. What we've done, and I can kind of talk to you because I'll talk for an hour on that topic. We got rid of our copier because we just felt like what was the point? We got a high-speed scanner, so every time something comes in, we scan it and we just print off copies because we have a hard copy saved, you know, where we want to save it on the file, and we'll get into that. But you can do both. You can scan it and then fax it on the internet through Ring Central, or you can have a dedicated fax line and fax it from your office, whatever you choose. So I'm going to move on because we only got 30 minutes, so we got a lot to cover. Fastcase. Anyone use Fastcase? Okay. I had Lexus Advance. I don't know if anyone had that, or I had Westlaw. I mean, if I remember that ad, I was in the Westlaw ad years ago. Great packages, but Fastcase has gotten better, and I know Phil. I mean, and I remember Fastcase 1. It was like Word Perfect 1. I mean, it wasn't good, right? Who knows Word Perfect anymore, right?
I do.
Right? And I used to love Word Perfect, but no one uses it anymore. But Fastcase is an underutilized tool for lawyers, and it's free. It has everything you need. And when you talk about costs, I mean, it's like losing weight, right? You can either work out more or eat less. You want to make more money, you can either spend less or make more, right? This is one way you can spend less money. It is a fabulous tool, and I know Pat would agree with me.
It also now has a mobile app that can sync directly from your MSBA account. So you can keep all of your searches. And this is just for MSBA members. The app is free to anybody, but they have a mobile sync that is actually the email you received from me Tuesday had that information. So if you didn't delete it already, you can go back and look at it.
It has all the cases. It has all the statutes. If you look up, I think it's a fabulous way for a small firm or any firm to really cut, you know, the cost of, you know, legal research, because it can be, you know, very expensive if you get the total package. So that's one way, and I use this every day. Fastcase, Google Scholar. We'll talk about Google Scholar as well. I use these things every day. And again, I've had Lexus Advance. It's a fabulous software package, but it can be expensive. And I've also had Westlaw. So I would highly recommend, getting. If you're a member of other bars, there's other free. I think it was Casemaker. I'm a member of the Georgia bar. I'll tell you all about that later. And you get Casemaker as well. Well, as a benefit to their membership. But these things are tools that you use, and there is an app, and I actually use the app. So let's go on to the next one. All right. Now, this is really what kind of changed our practice. We were using Amicus. I know some people that are using Amicus. And it's a fine program. No offense to Amicus. But we had so many integration problems. Our server wouldn't communicate with the computers. We would break down. It was a virtual nightmare. When it worked, it was great. But it was like if you have a car and when it runs, it's good. And when it doesn't, it just doesn't. You're like going to the car. You're like, is it going to start today? I'm like, we got to find something that we can use anywhere that's easy. And we found Clio, which is endorsed by the MSBA, and you get a benefit, or you get a reduced rate for signing up. And what does it allow you to do? It's a cloud-based system. So your files in your office exists in the cloud. And if Pat will allow me, I can actually bring it up. You open your file, you put all your information in. You can actually download all of your documents in the cloud. So on my phone, there's a Clio app, right? Imagine that. So I can touch this button, put in my login information, and my entire office is on my phone if I want it to be, on my tablet or on my iPad. So all my contacts, all my messages, all my documents, you can do your billing. I mean, you can do everything you can do anywhere as long as you have an internet connection. Highly recommend it. It has a billing function. You can track your trust account. So we changed to this program about a year ago, and I couldn't be happier with the results. And I think at this point it's about $30 to $40 a month. And if you have Amicus, or what are we using? Amicus, PC Law, Tabs 3. If you're using any of those, you know when it's time to upgrade, there's an upgrade fee and there's training sessions. Well, with Clio, the training is there. It's free. It's online. And it's an amazing program. I couldn't, recommend it more. Is anyone using it? Or Rocket Matter? Anyone? You using it? Go ahead.
I'm not using it.
You're not using it?
I'm not. Okay, it always really concerns me. You talk about putting your entire office in the cloud. What concerns do you have just of it being there and not in your hand?
That's a very 1980s question. And, it's all in your mind. What's so unsecure about it? Do you send emails? Do you send emails? If you send emails, how secure is their office? Right. How secure is anything? If you really think about it, if you're using the internet, it's the internet. It's only as secure as you make it. Somebody could always break into your account, but they would have to actually know your passwords and your email address or whatever, log in, and you would know they were there because there's a transaction button that shows when someone logs in, someone logs out. So it's the same. It's the same thing conceptually. It's just it's new, so we all it's always a lag time for us to kind of be comfortable with it.
Well, do you use Dropbox or is this?
Yes, I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
Well, we can talk about that right now. In Dropbox, Clio has its own function to bring your files into your hard file into your Clio file. But I also actually have a Dropbox app on Clio. So what happens is if I have 45 documents in a client, I'll just highlight all of them, and then and the Dropbox will just drag them all to the Dropbox file, okay? And then it actually sorts them for you. So all you have to do is go and point and click and say, look, this is pleading, this is discovery, this is correspondence, this is, whatever I want to name it, save it, and it's there as long as you have an internet connection. And I use Dropbox. There's other things that you can use, but I think it's just a wonderful tool. Does somebody else have a?
I just want to know if either of these companies have live customer service, and if they do, how good is it?
Now, again, I use Clio, so I can't really speak to the other company, but you can call Clio. They do have live customer service. I believe they're Canadian-based, but they have web. I mean, what they do is frequently asked questions. They post web videos, so it's like 1 million web videos, and most of your questions are going to be answered through that, or you can call in. You certainly could do that. But the good thing about this program is, when I went through the kind of transition to Amicus, there was like a week or two period where I couldn't find a file. It was down. This is kind of seamless. And because there's no software, there's no real connectivity problem. As long as you got a connection, it's working. So I found that to be kind of helpful. I've had many problems, and I don't know if you've all experienced that when you have Amicus or Tapster and you try to transition to something else. It's like you can't sleep for like 5 weeks because you don't know if this client is in, that client is out. Did you miss a court date? You're getting a letter from Glenn, like what's going on? It's really can be harrowing.
So if I use Dropbox and I use Google Calendar, why do I need this?
Well, again, why do you need to drive a Porsche when you can drive a Prius? I don't know. I mean, it's up to you. I think that's a valid point. You certainly could use Google and not pay anything. You certainly could do that. I mean, the benefit, in my opinion, of Clio is it's designed for you. So all the things that you would, kind of like intuitively think you need, it's already there. The billing is already there. It's already set up and designed for lawyers. The trust accounting is there. So those kind of minute details, Google's, awesome, but they don't really have that. And this actually syncs wirelessly with the Google Calendar. So if I'm on my phone, I'm in court, I get a court date, I put it on my phone in Google Calendar, then it'll sync and it'll be on my Clio calendar immediately. Or I can go into my Clio app and do the same thing. So it's a seamless integration. But you certainly, when I started out, and Pat can verify this, where I didn't have anything. I mean, somebody gave me some law books. So I had a phone in the basement of my best friend's house. So that was my law office. And, this would have been amazing, like an amazing treat for someone just starting out. And that's why the practice of law has changed. The playing field is lower. Anyone can enter and anyone can start a practice now because the costs are so low, which makes it good and I guess makes it bad.
Those people are Cleo's downstairs, so use the opportunity to talk to them.
You use Clio for a while, and for whatever reason you want to stop. Could you get all your stuff back?
Oh, absolutely. Easily? It's your stuff.
I understand that. But
yeah.
Okay.
It would be much easier to get it off of, because remember, these are all your files. You put them there, and you can take them back. I mean, you just put them in you can always take it out of the cloud, right? Because it exists on your hard drive, and what you're doing using Clio is saying, it's no longer just on my hard drive. I'm taking it off my hard drive, and I'm putting it on the internet. So if I go to Vegas for a weekend, I can just pull up my files and still work on them, just like I'm, right at my desk in my office.
Does it have any type of feature as some type of portal that your client or another attorney could log on and see your document? Or
they have something
like
called
that?
Clio Connect, which is an amazing feature, and I probably could spend about 2 hours just talking about all the minute details of Clio, but it's called Clio Connect. So what happens is when you open up a matter, your client gives you an email address, right? And the old method was, okay, you do some work, you write down what you did, then you give it to somebody, then they do a bill, and then they mail it to the client gets it, they read it, they're pissed off, they put it down, they bring it back up, they put it back down, you call, they say, oh, I just got it, they put it back down, and then hopefully you get a check, all right, or you withdraw, all right, that's the old method. With Clio Connect, what happens is there's an email address that the client gives you, and then it becomes a one-on-one portal from Clio to the client. So whenever you do a bill, you push one button, the bill automatically goes to them. There's no longer, Once the bill is done, and they have something called Law Pay. So you can send a link with your bill and say, look, you can pay it right now by clicking on Law Pay, and the credit card will be taken, and it'll be like a seamless transaction. You have the capability of doing that now. You don't have to do it like
My
that.
question is, other than the ability to email, let's say, draft of.
It's not an email. Remember, it's not an email.
Here's my question. Today, if I wanted to email to a client, if I wanted a client to see a pleading, I draft it, say, here, Jane, please look at this, tell me if it's accurate. If you have Clio, is there a different way to do that, where you don't have to email it to them?
Right. Clio Connect.
Knows, look in there, and you'll see what the attorney's working on and where he's up to.
That's what I mean. You need an email address to create the portal. That's the basis of it. So once those email addresses are connected, then it's a one-on-one link. So if you have a document, just send it to them. So it's a one-on-one secure link, and you can go to the website, and they can go through all of the capabilities of it. But I use it all the time, and clients like it. Sometimes we still follow up with mail, but everybody gets bills in the mail. I only like to send thank you notes, because no one gets any letters anymore. But that's a discussion for another day. But we need to move on. I'm never going to make it through this. Dropbox, this is a free program. We kind of talked about it.
Go back.
Oh, I don't even know how. Brad, how do I go back? There we go. Dropbox is the program we talked about. They give you a couple gigs free, and it basically is a place where you can, store information on the cloud. So basically, you have something on your hard drive, you can drop it in this box, and then it's available for others. You can share it. It's an easy way to share documents between other people. I'm sorry, I'm kind of blocking your view. But I use Dropbox. There's so many things out on the internet. There's so many things that you could use. I use it. I like it. It's free up to a certain point. eFax. We started out using eFax with Ring. If you have a Ring Central, we got rid of eFax after we got Ring Central. If you don't have Ring Central, it's the same. It's essentially eFax is they give you a phone number, and someone faxes you or something to that number, and they create a PDF, and it becomes an internet fax. So I think it's a great program. I don't use it anymore because Ring Central has kind of eliminated the need for that in our practice.
What's J Connect? J Connect on the bottom.
It's a similar.
Just a similar product. I try to put. I know the products I use, but I also try to put the other products in there too for dexterity's sake. Okay, Google. I don't know if you use Google or it's really a great program. And what we've done in our firm is kind of the old method. And it used to be, and I tell people this, and they don't believe me. When I started practicing law, no law firm had a website. Nobody had a website. They just didn't. And I got a website, and everybody thought, what are you doing? I'm like, well, sounds like a good idea. They told me I could make some money doing it. And now, who doesn't have a website, right? And that's been in 10 years. When I started out, universally, lawyers were out of that game. They just didn't do it. And Google has kind of changed everything again because, I was talking to someone in the aviation field just last night, and what we did was switch our email server from being hosted by Westlaw or Martindale-Hubbell, which I'm sure some of you are hosted by, and we let Google host it. So although my email is hhunt@kimmetthuntlaw.com, when you send me an email, it comes up in Google, right, which is vastly superior. Do you know what program the Federal Aviation Administration is using for email? Lotus Notes. Are you kidding me? Lotus Notes? I didn't even know that still existed. So they're switching to Google because it's a great, I don't know who uses Gmail, but it's a great program, and it has 90 gigs. You can't, if you use that many emails, something's wrong with you. You need to take a break because it's free. There's so much that you can put on it. and it's integrated. Where they have the calendar, the drive, the docs, the vault, all those things the gentleman suggested. You could literally run your law practice from Google. But let's talk about some. So these are just some of the apps. Now I've used the web album. I don't use it that much. Places, Voice. Google Plus is supposed to be a replacement for Facebook, as they say. We'll see what happens with that. Analytics is actually a good one. You can kind of test the veracity of your website, for lack of a better term. And they just have a number of apps that you can blog, you can use the calendar. These are things that, again, if I were just starting out, I would certainly, start with Google.
You talk about Voice for a minute, if you don't mind? Can you tell us a little more about Voice?
I do have a couple of things. I only got 5 minutes, but we can talk about that in the courtyard. Hold on, let me. This is Google Translate, right? This is amazing, okay? So you can translate any phrase you want. And so I said to myself, what phrase would lawyers always want to? So if you get that next client and he speaks Haitian Creole, that's exactly how you say it, okay? Let me see. Okay. Google Scholar. By a show of hands, who uses Google Scholar? Anyone? This is a great program. All right. Now, everyone knows this case, right? Plessy versus Ferguson. Right? This program will bring up the case, right, the entire case, and then you can stratify. If you look over here on the left, right here, you can see all activity on this case in different years, right? Right now we have anytime. You can get articles, you can get supplemental materials. You can use that for any case. I mean, and that's free. That's right there for you. Whenever you're filing a summary judgment motion, you know what I do? I just type it in Google Scholar. Type in a similar case, and you would be surprised. I mean, you would be absolutely surprised about the documents you get, the supplemental materials you get, the kind of questions you get answered just by a simple free search. So that's what I'm telling you, for the solo, small firm lawyer, or 2 or 3 man shop, or 15-woman shop, this is something that can really, make the dividing line a little bit smaller, because you can get supplemental materials without having to pay for it. And that was kind of the reason that we started with Lexis Advance, because you could get those supplemental materials. But now the internet it makes it free and it makes it easy. Now, we all know who Patricia Yevix is. You can Google yourself. And this is actually Pat's slide, but that's always a good thing to do, because you'd be surprised what's being said about you on the internet. And you can also create a profile.
Yeah, we were talking about that. That's where you want to create your profile, especially as I mentioned, in case you have a more common name. That if you Google me, if you Google Yevix, I'm the first that's going to come up.
Now, speaking of common names, if you go to a website called howcommonismyname.com, you can figure out how many of you exist. Now, you may have met a Hughie before in your life. You may have met a Hughie. You probably haven't met a Hughie Hunt. I'm pretty sure I may be the only Hughie Hunt in the United States. There's about 56 Hughie's that are listed. So you might be standing in front of greatness. Google Alert. This is another thing. I mean, you can set it up to alert you on. I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. I'm from Cleveland. We can talk about that later. But you can get alerts on clients, sports, however you set it up. All right. So that's just a brief lesson on some of the apps available. I'm happy to talk to anybody about their experience.